with the scent of potpourri, films we commit to memory. Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer, a weekly podcast reviewing 2 new or recent release titles every episode with an occasional free-for-all segment at the end that we call Potpourri. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and you can find more of my work, including my written reviews, full episode show notes, and the complete backlog of our episodes and spin-off podcasts at obsessiveviewer.com. You can also follow me on Letterboxd and other social media platforms at obsessiveviewer, and send an email to matt@obsessiveviewer.com. If you'd like to support us and get access to hundreds of exclusive episodes, you can also join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. This week on Patreon, I will be getting caught up with Severance Season 2. I'm a couple episodes behind, but I've been reviewing each episode as it airs for the most part, but I'm a couple episodes behind. I also have companion episodes for each of the episodes that I'm recording of Obsessive Viewer this year. So this most recent one was for OV469, where I reviewed Aquila and the Bee and The Girl Is in Trouble. That was for my episode reviewing Captain America Brave New World and One of Them Days. And coming up in terms of companion episodes, I've got a review of The Mangler and something else that is going to be coming out soon. So check that out at Patreon. And I also have an immediate reaction, which I'll talk about a little bit here in a second, of the 97th Academy Awards that I recorded while watching this ceremony, because I was alone in my apartment and figured I would nerd out with my some of my new wireless equipment. So anyway, all that's on Patreon. Once again, you can sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for all that and a bunch more content. And if you want to support me without messing with Patreon, you can always buy me a coffee with the link in the show notes of this episode at buymeacoffee.com/obsessiveviewer. Okay. So this week on the show, we're going to be reviewing the new crime comedy from Dido Montiel, Riff Raff, in this week's secondary review. But before that, we're going to go over some movie news, maybe talk a little bit about the Oscars, and then maybe talk about some Indianapolis screenings that I did not gather in my notes. All of that is before we review the new survival thriller from Alex Parkinson, based on a true story and based on the documentary of the same name, Last Breath, in this week's feature review. And joining me once again on the podcast, making his third appearance on the podcast this year, is my friend and IFJ colleague whose work can be found at MidwestFilmJournal.com, and he can be followed on Letterboxd at the handle of Sam Movie Man. It's Sam Watermeier. Welcome back to the show, Sam. How are you doing this evening?
Thank you very much, Matt. My first appearance this year, I promised that I would do 20 episodes.
Yes.
And I am rapidly making my way up.
Absolutely.
It's only March and I'm already on 3.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like I'm doing pretty well.
Oh, absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, well, thank you. It better be. I got 17 more of these.
Right.
No, it's great to be here. Thank you very much.
Of course. So what have you been up to in terms of movies? I know that I think the last time you were on, I talked about your recent reviews of Hard Eyes and Companion. Have you written anything else recently or seen anything before we get to like a potpourri thing at the end of the episode? Anything you want to highlight that you've consumed recently?
Actually, yeah. So I've
Nice.
talked about this in past episodes, but Midwest Film Journal has an ongoing partnership with the Society of Professional Journalists, compiling a list of movies about journalism. I think we're up to 210.
That's awesome.
And we're adding some more to the list. And I recently watched Switching Channels, which is a His Girl Friday riff with Burt Reynolds, Kathleen Turner, and Christopher Reeve. Pretty stacked cast.
Wow. Okay.
I didn't much care for it, honestly. So that'll be lower on the list, but it's still kind of a fun artifact from the 80s. And I watched another movie called The Great Man, which is about, it kind of deals with like issues of separating the art from the artist and like the way that the media treats celebrities in the wake of their deaths. It's about a reporter who has to choose between memorializing this broadcast star and revealing some of the dirty truths about him and his off-air behavior. It feels oddly, even though it came out in the late 50s, it feels oddly still relevant to today in in this era of like, you know, celebrity scandals and exposés. It's actually loosely based on a real broadcaster from the 50s, Arthur Godfrey, who was kind of publicly celebrated, but he had kind of a fall from grace after some on and off air drama unfolded about him. So that was interesting. And, you know, just as this list develops, it's cool to find little gems like that in the journalism genre.
Yeah, especially with like, I mean, being up to over 200 at this point is like insane because like you can get into like the very like niche stuff or the very like underseen stuff. That's really cool.
Yeah, so it's actually it's kind of more fun now because when we started we had the obvious picks. Like, you know, all the President's Men and Spotlight. And, I mean, you know, those are great, obviously, and it was a blast writing about them, but it is cool, like you said, to kind of dig deeper into the genre and find that there even are hundreds of these movies out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. That's very awesome. And again, I'll put a link in the show notes and everything like I did last time. And I highly recommend checking that out. And kind of yeah, of course. And kind of on a similar note, I guess, or related note, in terms of playing this week in indie, I don't have anything listed for the things that are in town this year or this week, but I do have links to all of these theaters, like the Alamo Drafthouse, Can, Living Room Theaters, Keystone Art, Flicks Brewhouse, the kind of, I guess, smaller theaters, I guess, or the ones that have like the interesting stuff going on. But I did want to mention that our colleague Lou Harry, he is going to be running the first edition of what's being called Real Trivia at the Alamo Drafthouse here in Indy. So on Sunday, March 9th, they're going to have like a pub trivia thing. Lou had said that he provides the original questions. And it's free to play. Drinks and food will be available for sale. You can come solo or bring a team of 3 to 4. And that trivia thing is going to be continuing at Alamo Drafthouse every other Sunday. So it'll be March 9th, March 23rd, April 6th, and so on and so forth. So if you haven't checked out Alamo Drafthouse on Lafayette Road, definitely check it out and check out the trivia night, the Real Trivia thing, because that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm so happy to hear he's doing that.
Me too.
You know, the connection there with the Society of Professional Journalists is that Lou is the editor of their magazine Quill, which puts out that list of journalism movies. So yeah, that's a cool connection, and Lou's a great guy, and a fun film buff to talk to. So I would highly recommend going to that event.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I love Lou, so I'm excited that he's doing that. So yeah, so I will put a link to the Alamo Drafthouse in the show notes, of course. And I will say also that Alamo this month, I believe, is either continuing or they're starting like a run of pretty much every David Lynch movie is going to be at Alamo at some point throughout the month. And they unveiled their list of screenings and stuff for May, which they are naturally, since it's Indianapolis, they're going to be showing a lot of racing and car related movies. So like they're going to be showing Fury Road at one point, and yeah, Fury Road is going to be at some point, I'm not sure, but like they're going to have Speed Racer. I lost it. The original Fast and the Furious, not original Fast and Furious, the Fast and the Furious from 2001, Rush, and Talladega Nights, Days of Thunder, and Turbo. Turbo is going to be on May 17th. So anyway, Sam, are you
cool?
Yeah, any of those pique your interest or anything?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I didn't get to catch Speed Racer in the theater when it came out, so I would love to catch that. Fury Road is, a new classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Nice.
I enjoy racing movies a lot more than the Indy 500 itself.
Right. Same here.
Sorry to be blasphemous here, but being from Indy, I guess I should love it, but
yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. I mean, being from Speedway, I feel like I should love it, but it's cool that, there's loud noises at the track. but yeah, I do like the spectacle of racing in movies. Like I talked with our friend Andy on the podcast a little bit earlier this year about Grand Prix, John Frankenheimer's Grand Prix, which is phenomenal. It's amazing.
I've actually never seen that.
It's some of the most like jaw-dropping racing sequences I've seen on film. It's like, it's so good. It's like, there's just something about it that just feels like, I think I said this in the episode, but it feels like every time I've been just like surprised or impressed by any kind of vehicular set piece in a movie, like it's like watching Grand Prix makes me feel like I've been impressed by it because of Grand Prix. Like it feels like the template for a lot of ways that it's filmed, like racing and stuff is filmed. Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. And we're going to go into news before the reviews. But before that, speaking of Odd Trilogies and speaking of Andy, who is part of Odd Trilogies, I was recently a guest on Odd Trilogies. So this past week, my guest appearance on Odd Trilogies dropped, where I was on the episode to discuss John Frankenheimer's Paranoia trilogy, which entails The Manchurian Candidate, 7 Days in May, and Seconds. I had a blast, and I'm very, very excited for people to listen to it. It's always a joy to get to chat with Andy and Logan, and the discussion was great. Those movies are fantastic. So if you are a listener of this podcast, go check out Odd Trilogies. If you are a fan of Anthology, which is a show that I need to bring back, and are hurting for me to talk about Serling, go check it out because he wrote 7 Days in May. So, yeah.
Hurting because your name is Matt Hurt?
Yes. If you're matting, that's, it's funny. This is a tangent and we'll get into news before the reviews, but today at work, I had to call IT, and I I was on the phone and I said, like, they asked for my ID, which my ID number includes MAH. Which is weird because A is not my middle initial. But anyway, so I was like, it's this, and then I was like, M is in Matt, A is in Apple, H is in Hurt. And I heard a couple of my coworkers laughing in surprise, and I'm sitting there thinking the whole time I'm like, do they not do the alphabet thing, that whole phonetic spelling or whatever it's called? Am I weird for that? And then after I got off the phone, I realized that they had thought I had said M for meth. And yeah, it was pretty funny. So yeah, anyway,
that's funny because I've actually never once done that in my entire life.
Oh, really? Meth?
Oh, well, yeah, thank God. No, spell something out and say the word that it would go with. I've never. I'm just awkwardly clear in how I pronounce things.
Sure. I think it's a holdover from when I worked in a call center.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But speaking of call centers, do you want to call in to the news before the reviews segment, or
your segues are just
terrible? Yeah. Oh, well, that too.
No, they're charming. They're
Thank you.
A staple of the show.
Yes.
Yes.
Nice. Okay. Well, to bring us into news before the reviews, it's okay. We're going to talk a little bit about the Oscars at the end of this segment, but I talked about this last week that it felt weird. I think it was last week where I talked about a celebrity death, and it was the second consecutive week that I've talked about a celebrity dying. And unfortunately, this is the third consecutive week for celebrity deaths on the podcast. So last week we learned that Michelle Trachtenberg from Gossip Girl, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Harriet the Spy, she passed away at the age of 39. And that was very unexpected, very sad, very tragic. What's your relationship with Michelle Trachtenberg's work, Sam?
Well, as a kid, I grew up with Harriet the Spy. Jen and I actually rewatched it recently.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it was, before her death, but just what a fun movie. What a sweet movie. It was really fun revisiting that. I have fond memories of when that came out. I think that was one of the first Nickelodeon VHSs that it had the orange tape.
VHS. Yeah.
I don't really know if I've seen a lot of her work. I will celebrate her performance in Mysterious Skin.
Oh, okay.
Which is an incredible movie.
Nice.
If you've never seen it.
I have not.
It's a Greg Araki movie, and it's just tremendous. And she gives a really poignant performance in that. It's a shame. She was very young, and yeah, that's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Mysterious Skin also featuring Brady Corbet.
There you go.
Yeah. Michelle Trachtenberg, I was a fan of hers growing up. Harriet the Spy was one of those things that it spoke to me for some weird reason, because there were two things in my childhood that I kind of clinged to quite a bit. One was this desire to be a writer, and the other one was to be I guess mostly it was just a nosiness aspect, but like I wanted to have like a detective agency.
Oh, sure. Oh, me too. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's like a rite of passage for children. But like, I remember, this is so dumb, but I remember like me and my friend finding, like, this is when I was in like probably like third grade or something, finding like a broken like beer bottle and it said like Cerveza on it or something. And like, this was before the internet. So like, I was trying to figure out like what the word meant. I think there was like a Spanish to English dictionary somewhere. And I was like, oh, this must be something that was discarded because the people that lived there had some big argument and they probably threw that out or something. And it was like in my brain at the time, I was like, oh, I want to be a detective, but it's like, no, I'm just telling a story. I'm just making up something. Right. But Harriet the Spy spoke to me because it was a girl like my age doing like spy stuff and having like a composition notebook that she wrote everything in, which like something about that, like just the way that it looked, like the way, like, I think that was the first time I saw like one of those like composition notebooks or whatever. Like it looked like, oh, I want to do that.
Right.
But yeah, so.
Oh,
yeah.
I can totally relate to that. That's a lovely memory.
Yeah. 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 But as far as Michelle Trachtenberg as an adult actress, I didn't mean it like that. As a like former child actor who transitioned into doing movies, like that she was in movies, Eurotrip and Take Me Home Tonight is one that's I feel is very underseen.
Oh,
yeah, like I think she has just a very small part from my memory of it. I think she was like she played like this like stoned like goth girl that one of the characters like had like a flirtatious thing with in that movie. Like it's a very small part, but it like I don't know. I really like that movie. So yeah.
She's in a lot of great stuff. Mm-hmm. I would encourage people to, look through her filmography.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so continuing this this tone for the rest of the episode, really. We also found out last week that legendary actor Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa passed away in their home. They were found last week, but I believe his date of death was February 17th. I know recently on the podcast I talked a bit about Unforgiven, which he is in, of course, but like the thing about Gene Hackman is this guy's like his resume, like the amount of just iconic and incredible roles that he had is incredible to me. And the fact that I think he only won 2 Oscars, like that just blows my mind, because like the amount of just incredible work that he did throughout his lifetime is staggering. How did you take the news of Gene Hackman's passing?
Well, I was, much more familiar with his work. I mean, I kind of grew up on it. I mean, yeah, he's a legend. He's been in countless classics. The French Connection, Superman, Unforgiven, like movies that my parents really loved, that kind of got me into movies and got me curious about movies. I think I was first aware of him as a kid when Enemy of the State came out. And, that kind of brought me back to his earlier work with, The Conversation. And there's also always been talk of his character in Enemy of the State kind of being like a spiritual brother of his character in the conversation, and both of those movies being paranoid thrillers and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, he could kind of do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could be menacing. He could be, a really tender character like the one in Hoosiers. He was great at comedy. The Royal Tenenbaums being an obvious example. I mean, his range is incredible.
Yeah.
And just always such a joy to watch. Like, you never really knew what he was going to do. I don't know. I find myself getting like flustered talking about him because I don't know how to describe his greatness. He was just an unforgettable actor.
Oh, I totally agree. And I'm going to do a deep dive on a lot of his stuff, just like in memoriam, but like also just there are so many gaps that I have of his work that I need to fill. But like I said, I watched Unforgiven recently. That's an incredible episode, incredible movie. And he's great in it, of course. But I also really love The Conversation. That's a movie that I had the distinct pleasure of seeing for the first time at the Can. I think it was last year. And
oh, wow.
Yeah. And for whatever reason, the screening I went to, I was the only one in the theater. And it was one of those
that's a great way to see it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, just an incredible breadth of work from him, that he leaves behind an incredible legacy, that I will dive deeper into throughout the rest of the year, I think. So yeah.
Even in like movies that weren't that great, like Behind Enemy Lines or something like that, like he was great to watch. Like, I don't know, I always had fun watching him.
Same.
So,
and it's amazing, like he essentially retired from acting after Welcome to Mooseport, which was in 2004, and it's just like I respect, like I really respect that kind of, I don't want to say reclusiveness, but like that thing where like, he passed away when he was 95. His last 21 years were out of the limelight. Like I remember seeing like headlines here and there occasionally saying like, oh, rare like appearance of Gene Hackman in public, and it's like one of those douchebag like paparazzi photos and everything. But it's like I really respect that. The idea that like you can be a legend, an absolute legend in your field, and then just like be like, okay, I'm done. I'm good. And just, yeah. So I respect that. So.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, this is the way I announce my retirement from podcasting. Not really. Although, there's a dark thing that we'll talk about that later, probably if I remember to circle back to it. But on brighter notes, we don't have to talk too much about this, but news just broke today of, like, do I even want to talk about it? If we were like, we can talk about it because it's news, but David Arquette is returning to Scream 7 as Dewey.
Of course he is.
Yeah. Famously, spoilers for Scream 5, it's kind of hard for him to be in Scream 7. And we talked about how Scott Foley is going to be in the movie and Matthew Lillard. When that news broke and we talked about it, Sam, I had mentioned like, oh, that would be so interesting if they are playing like themselves and they are actors who played them in the Stab movies, and that's how they get around that. That's how they bring it back, which I still think would be great. But now this is like too much. Like this ruins that theory for me, because I don't think David Arquette is going to play the actor playing Dewey in Stab in Scream 7. Like, I don't think a big character from the franchise is going to be given that treatment, if that makes sense. So all that's to say, I have no idea what this movie is going to be, and that excites me. But also, it's just like, is this going to be completely off the rails, or is it going to be something unexpected but also expected, like Skeet Ulrich coming back in 5 and 6? What do you think of this news, Sam?
I'm getting a little tired of like the entire cast being revealed.
Yes.
I think they need to save some surprises if they have any left.
Right.
Like, obviously we don't know what the movie's going to be. Like, there's still that surprise element.
Mm-hmm.
But I just, like the Matthew Lillard, Matt Foley news was exciting.
Scott Foley. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Scott Foley. Yeah. I don't know who Matt Foley is. And now it's just getting kind of tiresome. Like I kind of groaned when I saw the David Arquette news.
Same.
And you don't want that kind of reaction. So I feel like they should stop now with the casting news.
Same. And Matt Foley is the Chris Farley character from SNL, the van down by the river.
Okay, well, at least it's someone.
Yes, exactly. So we'll see what happens with Scream 7. It's less than a year away at this point, so I don't know. It'll be very interesting. But I have faith in Kevin Williamson. Because he's not going, whatever is going to happen, I think he's going to handle it. He's going to do a respectful job of it. He's not going to push this franchise completely off the rails. Like there's a rhythm. I don't know what the phrase I'm trying to think. There's a rhyme to the reason. There's a reason to the rhyme. I'm not sure. There's something there. It's going to make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a method to the madness. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also, speaking of, and this will be the last thing for news before the reviews, but speaking of Scream, and again, spoilers for Scream 5, this past week on Sunday, Mikey Madison became the first Ghostface to win an Academy Award.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. She won for Best Actress for Honora. And that is my way of bringing us into a quick Oscar discussion. Like I said, to just plug Patreon again, I did do a whole thing where basically I watched the Oscars at home. I had my wireless mic set up and I was basically talking. I muted the TV and talked about the Oscars at each commercial break. That is up on Patreon. What I forgot to mention at the top of this episode is that I actually made that available to both free and paid members of Patreon. So everyone has access to it. Just go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and sign up either for free or paid for more content. But that episode is up there. So my thoughts on the Oscars are out there. Sam, what did you think of the Oscars? What you saw of it, or any standouts or snubs that you want to call out in terms of winners?
I guess I'll just start with Honora since you started there. I wasn't a huge fan of Honora.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't quite grab me like it did with other people. Having said that, I think it's pretty exciting for a Sean Baker movie to win Best Picture.
Yeah.
I was rooting for The Brutalist, but it's cool to see an indie filmmaker come out on top for a movie that's similar to his other movies. I mean, it's not a big movie. It's another kind of low key indie drama. So it's cool to see a movie like that get this kind of widespread recognition. Even if I didn't like it quite as much as the other nominees. Mikey Madison is a promising young actress. I was rooting for Demi Moore.
Same.
I know people have been joking that Mikey Madison winning is kind of like something that would happen in The Substance.
Yeah, it's literally the plot of The Substance, essentially.
Right. I was happy to see Adrian Brody's comeback. It was cool to see him on the Oscar stage again after having kind of a rocky path back to the Oscar stage. And he acknowledged that in his speech. Sorry,
I was just going to say what I didn't know about him and everything is that his partner is a former wife or girlfriend of Harvey Weinstein, and I believe that her kids are Harvey Weinstein's kids. And it was something like, I saw like a post somewhere that was like, it's like, it's interesting to know that that Harvey Weinstein's kids call him Popsy, call Adrian Brody Popsy. I don't know. There was something about that I just kind of was interesting to me. I don't know, but yeah, that was an interesting.
Yeah, there's
thing.
A lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize that she had that connection to Harvey Weinstein either. Yeah. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, The Pianist was a Weinstein production. Was it?
That's possible. It was also directed by Roman Polanski.
Oh, wow. We're getting all sorts of controversy.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not wrong about that. I'm sure Adrian Brody has worked with Harvey Weinstein in some capacity.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, tons of actors have crossed paths with him by this point. Just given his influence.
Yeah. But I didn't mean to derail this with that. That's like
no, that's okay. But I think he gave the longest Oscars, or the longest speech in Oscar history.
I think so too.
I found it a little off-putting in that sense. It got a little indulgent.
Yeah.
Kind of like he had sort of an excuse me, I'm speaking sort of moment.
Yeah. Which
is like, dude, you're not like a world leader. Like, just get off the stage.
Right.
I thought it's funny because I thought the speech was great up until that moment.
Same.
I thought he should have ended it there. But I don't know what was going through his mind, obviously.
And from what I could find, I don't think the Weinsteins were involved with The Pianist.
Okay. Well, I messed that up then.
Oh, no, it's fine. I just wanted to provide some clarity.
No, I appreciate it. I'm sure he has worked with Harvey Weinstein.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like he's been in a Miramax movie or something. I was happy to see Kieran Culkin win.
Same here.
It's funny. I saw a clip today of Edward Norton mouthing the F word.
I saw that too. What did you make of that?
Well, if he was honestly expecting to win, it's like, really? Get real, dude.
Right.
Like, he didn't win any other awards as for A Complete Unknown, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
So it's like, did you really expect some surprise
right.
win? Like, I guess that's my problem with the Oscars overall. I feel like by the time they arrive, there have been so many other award shows that the winners are just all too predictable. I mean, this one did have some surprises.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly thought Demi Moore was a shoo-in. It wasn't that shocking that Mikey Madison won, though.
Right.
She had won previous awards. I thought Nora's kind of big sweep was surprising in the sense that The Brutalist did win Best Picture at the Golden Globes.
Yeah.
Which is usually an early indication of its Oscar chances.
Yeah, and I got I got my hopes up for The Brutalist once it started winning like cinematography and score, and I was just like, oh, it could come back, it could do it, but yeah, oh well. Yeah,
I mean, I don't think it's like a travesty by any means that Nora won. Yeah. I'm sure Sean Baker will go on to do interesting work. I just happen to be a bigger fan of the Florida Project and Red Rocket, and even like Tangerine. But I unfortunately can't really speak for Conan O'Brien. I missed his early stuff. So I'm eager to go back and watch that. So yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much sums up my thoughts.
Yeah. It was fine. I will say, Hulu is, on my list because I, like thousands of people, got like shut off at 10:30. The presentation of the Oscars. So I missed, Mikey Madison and the Best Picture win. It was weird. Yeah. So, yep. Yeah. And there's a whole other thing, that I could, a whole other thing I can talk about with Hulu, but that was a whole thing. It's nothing. Yeah. Anyway, that is news before the reviews. Once again, you can listen to me rambling about the Oscars in progress as it was airing on Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Once again, that episode is available to free members as well as paid members. So if you want to listen to that, check that out. And also for free members, in December, I did an episode with reviewing, oh God, whatever the baggage claim movie was, or the TSA movie was. I already forgot. Carry On. Yes, there you go. Carry On and Hot Frosty. So that's up on Patreon as well, for free members. So, that is news before the reviews. Sam, would you like to get into our feature review for the evening, in which we're going to be reviewing Last Breath?
Let's do it.
Nice. Yes. So Last Breath, first of all, we're going to go into our feature review. We're going to do a non-spoiler and spoiler review. So if you don't want to be spoiled on Last Breath, check the show notes for timestamps to navigate around the spoiler section. When we switch over to spoilers, I'll play a clip from the trailer. And of course, those show notes are in your podcast app or in the description on YouTube, or at obsessiveviewer.com/OV469. And here we go for our feature review of Last Breath. Last Breath is currently in theaters, was released in theaters February 28th, 2025. The premise, according to IMDb, is a true story that follows seasoned deep-sea divers as they battle the raging elements to rescue their crewmate trapped hundreds of feet below the ocean's surface. Director for this movie was Alex Parkinson, and writers were Mitchell LaFortune and Alex Parkinson and David Brooks. The cast includes Woody Harrelson, Simu Liu, Finn Cole, Cliff Curtis, Mark Bonner, and Mayanna Buring. So, Sam, Last Breath. First, I do want to ask you, have you seen the 2019 documentary, also by Alex Parkinson, about this real life event before seeing the movie?
No, I hadn't. I don't think I had even heard of it. So I went in completely cold, and I'm actually glad I did.
Yeah, that's interesting because I watched the documentary the day that I went to the theater to see this movie. And that'll be the companion ep that will hopefully go up like in tandem with this, but it might be a little delayed, but whatever, on Patreon. But basically the kind of my brief thoughts on the documentary was that it's a very good, well-constructed documentary that uses a lot of archival footage of the actual event, the actual thing that happened. And the way that it's tied together, the way that the documentary uses some interesting narrative tricks that I won't go into detail about. It's an interesting gamble, and it pays off really well. And it was to the point where as I was like leaving to go to the theater, I thought that documentary was very solid. It made me wonder, like it made me both more interested in seeing this movie because the subject is interesting, and it simultaneously made me feel like this documentary is good enough as a narrative. Like it doesn't need to be a fictional movie. It doesn't need to be made into a film with like actors and stuff. The documentary did that pretty well. So like, I was in a weird place when I went to the theater to see this movie. So yeah. So we're coming at it from different angles, I think.
That's really interesting. And especially to watch it like right before seeing the narrative version.
Yes. I would like to say that was planned and everything, but it's mostly just I procrastinate all the time. So I literally did not have time to that was the only time I could watch the documentary.
Well, I'm curious. Usually when I do a show with you, I have some sense of what you thought of the movie that we're discussing.
Yes.
Like, we'll either talk about it a little bit beforehand, or I will see your Letterboxd review. I have no idea what you thought of this movie.
Oh, interesting.
So, if you don't mind, I'm actually hoping you'll kind of go first.
Okay.
So I can react to your review.
Absolutely. This is very interesting. So I thought this movie was well done. It's a well-made survival thriller. And it is kind of, it's an amazing story, really. It's an amazing depiction of like what happened in terms of the actual event that happened, which is this man, Chris Lemons, is basically stranded on the bottom of the ocean with 10 minutes of oxygen left, and the rest of the crew needs to rescue him. It is this crazy thing that happened, and this against all odds thing. So the subject is interesting. The movie, again, with the documentary so fresh in my mind, like minutes fresh in my mind, it does something I respect about the movie is that it doesn't glamorize too much. It doesn't do like that Hollywood, like, oh, this is a big dramatic moment that like accounts for maybe an offhanded comment in the real life event. Like it's not like bringing it up to like Hollywood level. And I think that that's a credit to Alex Parkinson, because he also, I think he was a writer on the documentary and directed the documentary as well, or maybe co-directed. I'm not sure, but so I like the kind of the measured hand that is taken to making the movie. The downside of that is I feel like the story needed some of that. It needed some more like panache added to make it more suspenseful as a narrative film. And the other hand of that is that I felt like I felt like none of these characters came through. Like I didn't feel connected to really anyone in the movie, which is bizarre to me because I literally had just watched the documentary and I knew like the people that it was based on. So it's kind of a mixed bag for me. I thought that it was a very, like, I wasn't upset that I saw it. Like, also, much like the conversation, I had the theater entirely to myself. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, there are things that I like about the movie, like the sound design, I think is really great. The cinematography, like the depiction of like even just the vessel, like the ship on the water is really like isolating and scary in terms of just pitch black, dark, waves crashing, storms and everything. And it sets up the whole scenario really effectively, but it just didn't get me to that emotional place that a movie like this is supposed to, really. So, kind of a mixed bag. I'm looking forward to digging deeper into it, but yeah, I thought it was at best okay. At worst, kind of an issue here and there that detracted from my enjoyment. So, yeah, how about you?
Well, I think we're pretty much in alignment. I did enjoy at first that there wasn't a lot of filler, in the sense of, flashback sequences, or like I did find myself wondering, like, how are they going to pad out this story?
Yeah.
Because there's not a whole lot to it. And the incident that it depicts is pretty brief.
Yes.
Chris Lemons was underwater and trapped for, I think, 30 some minutes.
Something like that. Yeah. I think maybe 30 minutes on the dot. I'm not sure.
Before he was rescued. And I don't know if they keep track of how much time it took to recover him after finding him. I don't remember, but there, like, the actual incident, there's not a whole lot to it.
Yeah.
And at first I kind of appreciated the emphasis on just the painstaking process of deep sea diving. Like, there's a sequence where they're putting on their helmets, and it goes on for quite some time. Like, it's pretty long. Like, they all come up to what they call the bell, and they put their suits on, and you see them test the oxygen, and you see them put the helmet on, and I'm like, wow, this is really like taking us through step by step, and I kind of admire that it's making us feel how long it takes to ensure safety.
Yeah.
But then as the movie continued, I found myself wondering, well, was that scene so long because there's just not a lot to this movie? And yeah, I wonder, is the documentary like pretty lean in length?
It's about the same runtime, actually. And it's interesting because it is very close to the documentary as well. Like, there's, I mean, the time frame pops up all the time throughout the movie or throughout the documentary and all of that. But like, the thing that kind of struck me about the movie that, like, I liked that whole process, like showing like how extensive it is, how like grueling it is. And like, I feel like the movie really sold the just completely bonkers thing that they're doing. They're going to the bottom of the ocean to repair like oil valves or something like that. And like, up until the point where disaster strikes and the movie kicks into gear, I was like, I was impressed with the way that it was showcasing that and showcasing how like extensive it is, how dangerous it is and everything. So much so that I was just like, I would watch a whole movie of just this. Like just the fact that there are people that go do deep sea diving like this to do a job is like insane to me. And like, it's so weird that I had that thought. And then once it turns into that survival story, I didn't check out of the movie or anything, but I was like, my interest just kind of like went like lowered quite a bit. Mostly because like the people on the ship, their storylines, they were paper thin throughout it. And like, that's where I say that like, I feel as though they could have benefited from making it a little bit more dramatic and using some artistic license. So like when Cliff Curtis is given an option, like the dive supervisor guy is like, well, what we need to do is we need to drop anchor and we need to do this. It's like he's explaining that. And then Cliff Curtis just like very, very calmly is like, you know, there's pipes down there. We like, it could hit a pipe and cause a huge, huge disaster. And Craig is just like, well, you know, there's more like, there's more floor in the bottom of the ocean than there is pipes. And he's just like, no, I'm not gonna risk an environmental disaster. And that's the end of it. Like, that's just like, it's like, okay, yeah, you're going through the process and everything, but like maybe make it a little bit more, grandiose. And like little things like that just kind of felt like maybe like the movie was a little too tethered to the original documentary and the events that happened.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think it's a hard conflict because it's like, I think it's admirable that the movie's trying to mirror the sort of matter-of-fact nature of their job.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they can't get too emotional about it, but at the same time, if you're going to dive into a narrative version, it has to be more emotional.
Yeah.
And when you say you wish that there were more grandiose moments, I found myself wishing that there were more moments of the divers kind of explaining why they loved this job.
Yeah.
You never really got a sense of, because Woody Harrelson's character has a strong sentimental attachment to it.
Mm.
He's been doing it for decades. And Chris is like this eager young diver, eager to, get his ears wet, pun intended. And at one point his fiance says something like, "I know what you do is extraordinary." And I thought, let's explore that a little more, because what does he find so extraordinary about it?
Yeah.
I mean, like, when I get the idea that being at the bottom of the ocean, it's a risky adventure and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But when they're working on these pipelines, they're like in murky water, and it's impossible to see like the beauty of the ocean around them.
Yeah.
So it's like, what is so exciting about this exactly?
Right.
Like, I thought if the movie explored that a little bit more, that I would have been a little more emotionally invested.
I agree. And I would wager a guess that I would assume for a lot of them, the paycheck, because I would imagine that this is a lucrative specialty to get into.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
If you're going to risk your life for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's something else that's interesting is I really like Simu Liu as an actor, and his performance in this was solid. He plays that kind of like that. He's like, you'll hear in the trailer, like he's like, you know, I'm in charge of things. I'm going to do this and that and everything. He's kind of taking command of the situation. What's interesting about that is the actual guy, the Dave guy, is kind of a dick. Like in the documentary, like even if you just go look at the Letterboxd reviews for the documentary, everyone is pointing out like, this is an interesting documentary that's like showcasing all of these people in this interesting job and exposing one of them as a sociopath, because there's like at least one scene where, as they're recounting what happened, as they're telling doing the talking heads in the documentary, he's like, they're at the point where they're talking about mounting the rescue and doing the rescue thing and everything. Everyone's saying like, oh my God, he has to be dead at this point. Like we were expecting this and everything. And then fucking Dave pops up and he's just like, yeah, I didn't really care. I was just like, you know, it's a job. The job went wrong. You know, he did the job. He wasn't like my best friend or anything. So I didn't really care. Yeah. And I feel like at one point he also said like, I knew that he was building a house, but that's about it. And I'm just like, okay.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Very nonchalant.
If the movie emphasized like how cold he was, that would have been fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But it kind of feels like the movie is like, okay, well, maybe the documentary kind of painted him in a poor light. So let's make him be a little bit more likable in the movie.
See, I wish it would have gone harder and like depicted him as like a sociopath. Like that would have been fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. But it's interesting too. Like, I think there is like an inherent issue with tackling this specific subject, and you touched on it a little bit, that translating it to a narrative feature is going to be tough because it is such a finite amount of time. It is such a small window of time that these events unfolded. And like, obviously, like there's some comparisons to be made about other similar movies like this, like 127 hours. But like that is 127 hours of an event. Like you don't get, like, I'm not saying that you can excuse kind of a lackluster characterization for this movie because of that reason, but there is something to be said that the actual momentum of this event as it unfolds in this is sustained relatively well, given the short time frame of the event as it occurred.
Yeah, and I think it feels realistic in the sense that, like, I don't know how the timing actually lines up, but like the screen time of the incident in terms of when from the point that he's lost to his recovery feels like about 30-40 minutes.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
So it doesn't like pad it out too much. Which I kind of appreciated. Like it doesn't feel like that long of an event. Even when they cut to the crew on the ship above, you know, the action. And I thought that stuff was great, like with the not the captain, but like the supervisor of the divers.
Yeah.
Trying to figure things out. And like there's a scene of him working a submersible that's really tense.
Yeah.
It also doesn't feel terribly different from like things I've seen before. Like if I'm going to watch this sort of story, I guess this maybe sounds heartless, like I'm like Dave or something, but I would rather watch like The Abyss.
Sure. Yeah.
For, you know, something a little more exciting, but I want to talk about one flashback, but I don't want to get into spoilers if you don't want to.
I'm good to go into spoilers because there is something I want to talk about like really just the end of the movie. So yeah, we can transition over to spoilers if you're ready.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So, really quick, what did you rate it on Letterboxd before we go into spoilers?
I thought this was a solid 3-star movie for me.
Sure.
It's, I was entertained. I didn't have high expectations. It's not unlike a lot of survival movies I've seen before. I mean, it got the job done.
Yeah.
I thought it was okay. I'm curious to see the documentary now.
Mm-hmm. I recommend it. And of course, you can follow Sam at Sam Movie Man on Letterboxd. And I rated it 2.5 stars. I was very close to rating it 3 stars, but there were just some things in it that just like if I was more invested in it, and if I hadn't seen the documentary beforehand, I would have been a little bit more. I would have been a little less critical of the things that I found critical about the movie. I'll put it that way. But I ended up rating it 2.5 stars on Letterboxd. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and go into spoilers for Last Breath. I'm going to play a clip from the trailer. When we come back, we're going to be spoiling Last Breath. And of course, if you want to skip around, check the show notes for timestamps. So here's a clip from the trailer for Last Breath.
The thrusters have gone offline.
How many?
All of them.
Ship's moving. Get out of there. Right now. Copy that. A snag.
There is no more slack.
That's everything I've got. The ship's not drifting.
Chris has become our anchor. That's never going to hold.
Chris, on me. What happens now? Your umbilical. It's going to snap. I will come back for you, but you have to get yourself back to the top. I can't rescue you if I can't find you. Understand? Just make sure I'm alive.
All right, so spoilers on for Last Breath. Sam, I do have a couple of things about the documentary. No, I'm not going to spoil the documentary. Never mind. I was going to spoil like the structure of the documentary because there's an interesting way that it handles the narrative. All that's to say, I won't go into detail, but I will say that the documentary does a much better job of showing this story and telling this story in a unique way that I think is interesting for the documentary format, and it just didn't translate well to like this movie. So yeah, that's what I'll say about that. But spoilers on for Last Breath.
Yeah, so I mean that makes me even more curious to see the documentary. But the scene I wanted to talk about was there's a flashback to a conversation that Chris has with his fiance, and she says some things along the lines of like, I know what you do is extraordinary, but what we have together is also extraordinary, and I don't see how you can risk your life, and I'm terrified, and yada yada. And you would think that the whole ordeal would kind of make him take stock of his life and maybe go in a different direction career-wise. But it's very odd how the movie cuts to real-life footage that reveals that he went back to diving like 2 weeks after this traumatic incident.
Yes, that's exactly how the documentary ends, even with the line, like, don't fuck it up this time, which is a funny enough, like, way to end it. But, like, I had a problem with that ending as well, just because, like, I understand it's a finite amount of time that takes place. So, like, you don't have, like, the moment where, in this type of movie, where they have to contact his fiance and they have to get, like, her involved in everything, and they need to, like, do all of these things, because it's only, like, a half hour of time. but like it bothered me so considering the fact that their relationship is like the one thing that we get in the movie in terms of characterization, aside from Woody Harrelson being kind of pushed out to retirement. This is the emotional crux of the movie. And like, I thought just like the ending, I just thought like, okay, so like he's like, it's not even depicting it as like him like warming up to telling her the truth. Like he's just kind of lying to her at first. like, yeah, you know, someone had an accident, you know, they almost died. Also, it was me. Like, it's just like, what? Like, that doesn't land the way that I think it should.
Yeah, and like, I don't know. I wish there was a little exploration of how he was. I don't know if the documentary does this, but a little exploration of how he was able to go back so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would think that I would have some second thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, like, the audience in my theater, I heard some people get kind of upset about it.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Like, they kind of gasped at the reveal that he went back to the job. And I overheard some guy say, like, there's no way I would go back to that. And especially 2 weeks after, like,
yeah,
let alone any time.
Right.
And I just don't like the movie leaves you with this. It's like such a punch to the gut.
Yeah.
I just don't. That was a big problem for me. I just thought that was kind of unresolved.
I totally agree. And the documentary does nothing to expand on that. Like it's literally like that's the end of the documentary as well. So that's frustrating. And it doesn't, like, the movie doesn't give us any insight into why he does this or anything. It's just like he's engaged, his life is in peril, and he's back. Like it's whatever. The thing about the ending as well that I really didn't like, and I thought was just like it left it on such a weird sense for me, is that like in the documentary, Chris talks about how like, yeah, I have no idea how I was able to live down there. Like, I don't know how I'm still alive. Like, I should be dead. I don't know how this happened. And he gives like some theories. He's like, maybe it's because of this, maybe it's because of that. And the movie follows suit with that by saying like, you know, it was potentially because of the pressure and where he was and everything. But, you know, experts still don't know. And like, that rubbed me the wrong way, because this is a movie it's a fictionalized version of it. It's a narrative feature of it. And I feel like the movie was teetering into like a faith-based thing. Like it was maybe hinting at like, oh, you know, like divine providence shone down on him in the dark and he was able to do that. And like, I would not have had a problem with that at all. Like I'm not a religious person by any stretch, but like if that was the through line of the movie, I would have been into it. I would have been interested in it. But like that assumption or that thought that I had that it felt like that is based on the fact that it didn't feel like anything else. Like it's just like this perfunctory, like, oh yeah, experts still don't know what happened. And I'm just like, what is the point of that? Like, what is the point of the movie making? What is the movie making a point of in saying that, outside of like the documentary saying that same thing as a documentary? It just doesn't follow like a traditional narrative thing.
Yeah, and because he should have been brain dead.
Oh, 100%.
So it is a big thing to just kind of like leave on the table. And I would think that it's not just that he was rescued. Like it would be different if he still had oxygen when he was rescued, but he went like 30 minutes without air to his brain.
Yeah.
And so you would think that would influence his decision to, if I were him, I would not go back to that job.
Same.
Because it's like a total miracle that he lived.
Right.
So I wouldn't take that chance again.
Yeah.
So it is kind of weird that it's like, yeah, he should have been brain dead, but he just went back to it. Just because.
Yeah.
And I mean, I get that he probably had a lot of faith in those guys afterwards. I mean, I don't know about Dave. He sounds like a psychopath.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I agree that if it would kind of make more sense if it was like a faith-based sort of movie.
Yeah.
Or if it made a stronger point about like the will to survive,
right,
or something.
Yeah, and there are like little hints of that with like the like dream sequence or whatever, the thing he has before he loses consciousness where he thinks about his fiance, and I think it's that flashback, and like, but it doesn't connect in a narrative way. Like, I don't think the writers of the documentary, the people like with the writing credits on the documentary, wrote the film. Actually, I know for a fact that they didn't, but like, it feels like they did. Like, it feels like they were. I don't know. It feels like they were trying to parlay it into a film, but didn't understand like the basic elements of film in terms of telling like a story that is about like the people, or like having like a central theme that carries through the entire experience. This just felt like documenting what happened without the whole root of it all, like the meaning behind it, the thing that makes film one of the best mediums of anything. It just didn't connect.
Yeah, I guess oddly, this made me think about the movie The Walk, which is kind of a narrative version of Man on Wire. And you can see why The Walk exists. Like, it was meant to be experienced in IMAX to, give a more immersive depiction of that incredible feat. And present it in a more cinematic way than the documentary was able to.
Yeah.
But this movie, like, even though it kind of like proudly displays that it had a separate underwater cinematographer.
I noticed that. I thought that was interesting.
Like, I mean, it's impressive that it was filmed underwater. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's pretty murky.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. I don't seeing this on the big screen in the theater, like, wasn't that significant of an experience for me, just in the sense that the underwater stuff is dark as hell.
Yeah.
And like, unlike The Walk, like, it's not a more cinematic depiction than I imagine the documentary is.
Right. And the thing about the documentary as well is like, and this is maybe a cheap shot at the movie, but like, it feels like maybe it's a good looking movie for the most part. Like, those like top of the sea, like the top of the whatever, like the ship on the water, those scenes are like good. Like, it looks good. It's very cinematic in the way that it's shot. But like, there were moments in the underwater scenes where I was like, maybe they didn't have like a budget for any like wildlife down there. Like, it just felt like, and I'm not saying like, oh, I need like fish to come talk to him or anything like that, but like, I remember like shots in the documentary where it's like you see like fish kind of swimming around nearby, and I'm like, fill something in there, because it just looks like a tub that they're in, or whatever, a tank. So yeah, that's a minor nitpick.
I'll tell you what, though, that would have gone a long way. Like, if there was, even if it wasn't obvious, if there was just a brief shot of like a shark on the periphery.
Yes.
Like, that would have done a whole lot to make it visually more exciting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. What else can we talk about? Anything else that jumps to mind? Anything about the performances or anything?
I hate to be like cynical about it, but I get the sense that a lot of this movie was about, bringing a well-known cast to get this story a little more exposure. Like, I guess Woody Harrelson is a big enough star to, reel in an audience. And like his character is the quote unquote like fun character of the movie.
Yeah.
Like he's kind of the source of comic relief, and there's tension between him and the Dave character, and Dave is depicted as like kind of a hard ass, and there's conflict there. I don't think he's enough of a hard ass.
No.
Obviously the documentary is more interesting in that sense.
Yeah.
But, like, I thought the performances were good. They weren't like remarkable.
Sure.
I did appreciate little moments, like at one point Cliff Curtis calls Chris Diver 2, and he has to like correct himself.
Yeah.
I thought that was a nice moment in the sense that it emphasized like how they kind of have to put their emotions in check, but at the same time they have to like resensitize themselves to the humanity of the situation. So I thought that was interesting, but kind of underdeveloped. Like it's a very okay movie.
Yeah. That was the other thing that I kept kind of thinking about throughout the movie. Like, this is an inside baseball thing, but like the thing I kept thinking about throughout the movie was, man, how are we going to make this a full feature review? Because like it just felt like just hollow to me, and that's a bummer.
I think we've done a pretty good job.
I think so too. We've done it justice, I think. Yeah. And on that note, anything else on Last Breath?
No, not really. I did end up recommending this to someone at work because they were asking. They like gave me a few options of movies that are out right now, and this was one of them. And I was like, well, it's good. So I hope I haven't let them down. But there's not a whole lot out right now.
Right.
So I would say if you're going to see, like, I didn't regret seeing this. Like, I had a decent time. It was a decent, trip to the movies.
Yeah.
I didn't like fall in love with it by any means, but it's, so sometimes it's okay for a movie to just be like solid.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something else that I kept thinking about throughout it is, a critic somewhere online said at some point, they said, what people don't really consider, at least like general audiences don't really consider, is that most movies are just okay. Like it's not an anomaly, but it's somewhat rare to have like big, like strong emotions one way or the other. And that's something that I think is lost in the internet age, with people immediately like voicing like a loud opinion just because it's a loud opinion. But this is one of those just okay movies, I think. Yeah. And yeah, that can conclude our feature review of Last Breath. Before we get to the secondary review, I'm going to read my whole spiel, but I did have something I wanted to circle back to that's very dark, and it is something that, I don't know, like another thing that I was thinking about in the movie. Since I was the only one in the theater, I've had this thought a lot, and it's going to be dark, but my thought is and I'm pretty sure I've said this before on the podcast, but the amount of movies that I see and the amount of movie theater viewings I see, the amount of times I'm in the movie theater, statistically speaking, when I die, there's a decent chance I will be watching a movie when I die. Like,
not a bad way to go.
No, not a bad way to go at all. And like, as I was watching this movie, as I was in the theater alone watching this movie, I was thinking about that again. I think because the title is Last Breath and it's, near-death situation, I kept thinking that no matter what, I want, if I die while watching a movie, I really want someone somewhere to get into my Letterboxd and log that movie, just so there is a record of the last movie I ever watched on this earth. And this is a call out to everyone listening. When I die, go into my Letterboxd, log whatever movie I'm watching, rate it 0.5 star, and put the review as I'd rather be dead than finish this movie.
That's amazing.
Yes, that is what I kept thinking about throughout the movie. And it could be the best movie in the entire world, but just for the circumstance, I want that to be my final Letterboxd review if I die while watching a movie.
That's an amazing thought. And also Last Breath would be a funny movie to die to.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just the irony of it being about a guy surviving and like someone sitting dead in the theater is just like kind of darkly hilarious.
Mm-hmm. That's what, and like, that was also why I was thinking that, like, because it's not like, if I just die in the theater, like no one's in there to see me. Like it's not until the people come in to clean the theater. And that, I don't know, but that was my morbid thought.
Here's a thought. If you walked into a theater and found someone dead, would you still see that movie?
Not that showing. Because I doubt that they would show it. But,
well, right.
But I mean, yeah, I would. That's an interesting thought too, because there's an anecdote that Tiny has said on the podcast years ago. This was before the podcast even. This was in probably 2010 or 2011. He went to Shiloh, the Regal Theater on the West Side in Avon. He went to that theater. He was in his seat. He was there alone. And there was a couple that were sitting at the top row and they were talking before the movie. And then, if memory serves, Tiny just saw out of his peripheral vision a drink flying across the auditorium, going down the stairs and everything. And it turned out that one person in the couple was having a seizure.
Oh no.
Yeah, and Tiny had to call 911. The ambulance came. He got a free pass to see a movie after that. But I remember that. I remember hearing about that.
That's funny because I saw Last Breath and Riff Raff at Regal Shiloh.
Oh, nice. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, shall we go into our secondary review then?
Sure.
All right. Well, of course, before we get to our secondary review, I want to take a quick moment to remind you that if you like the show, please take a moment to follow us on social media and subscribe to and rate the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or whatever your preferred podcast app is. And don't forget to subscribe to the Obsessive Viewer Podcast YouTube channel, where I house all of the podcasts there as well. And I post some fun videos every now and then over at YouTube. And if you're interested in starting a podcast of your own, you can go to Libsyn and use the promo code OBSESS. When you sign up for a new account, you'll get up to 2 months free depending on when you sign up, and we'll get a commission on it as well. More details on that in the show notes of this episode. And now back to the show.
They tell me I view obsessively.
No Slim Jims. Past 2 hours, you've been passing gas like a very sick infant. I gotta breathe all day.
Sorry, Lefty. I had a lot of coffee, okay? Sorry.
And then you use my name? Jesus Christ, Lonnie.
You just said my name.
You catch our names by any chance?
Yep, he called you Lefty and you called him Lonnie.
Well, I overreacted.
Okay.
All right, and for this week's secondary review, we're going to be sharing our thoughts on Riff Raff. I believe this will probably be a non-spoiler review, which is why I played the clip from the trailer. It is currently in theaters. It was released on February 28th, 2025, and the premise, according to IMDb, is a former criminal's ordinary life is turned upside down when his old family shows up for a long-awaited reunion. Director for this movie was Dito Montiel. Writer was John Polono, and the cast includes Jennifer Coolidge, Ed Harris, Gabrielle Union, Miles J. Harvey, Lewis Pullman, Bill Murray, Pete Davidson, and Michelangelo Covino, who I had the pleasure of meeting at Heartland years and years ago, and I interviewed him on the podcast, and it's good to see him getting some work, I guess. So anyway, shout out to Michelangelo Covino, a person I have spoken to. So Sam, Riff Raff is a kind of dark comedy crime movie. How did you feel about this movie, Riff Raff?
I also went into this one pretty cold. Didn't know a lot about it beyond the genre and the cast. I was excited because of the cast. It's pretty stacked. And I enjoy a lot of the stars. This was a really strange movie. Mm-hmm. It's very odd in terms of the tone it tries to maintain. It shifts pretty jarringly between being a dysfunctional family comedy and kind of a crime thriller. And it seems to strain a little bit more to be a comedy, but I think it works a little better as a drama. I didn't dislike this movie by any means. I enjoyed certain aspects of it. I think it has moments that are effective. I don't think it really works on the whole. Like, I don't know. It also has a very strange trajectory in terms of the plot. Like, what ultimately drives the plot is a very odd conflict that I just didn't totally buy into. I wasn't totally invested in it. Same. Like the event that kind of drives the action sort of comes out of nowhere, and it's it's the way it ties to the theme of family didn't totally work for me. It felt kind of like contrived. I don't know, like everything about this movie felt kind of strained to me, like it was trying to do something that it never really succeeded at doing. I'll kind of leave my thoughts there for now.
Yeah, I agree. I think that kind of, I wouldn't even call it an inciting incident really, because it's the thing that pivots the story and makes everything, drives everything going forward, but we don't know about it until fairly late in the movie because of flashbacks and everything. But like, I get, and I even respect like where the movie is going with that, like why, like the why of it all, like this kind of sort of masculinity, sort of not like fragile masculinity, but like this like doubt and the impetus of it is basically something that I feel is a more broad subject in the movie. And the jealousy that it brings out is interesting. I just think that the way that the movie tells this story, the way that the movie kind of explores that is way too disjointed. Like I said, we don't even know like the reason behind the action that takes place until we get a flashback with him talking to his father and kind of learning about why the character at the center of it is the way that he is, or what have you, or the way that he's reacting to seeing something from an ex of his. So like, I appreciate that the movie kind of withholds that, but I think that since that is kind of the crux of the entire movie, I wish that it was spelled out a little bit clearer earlier so that we could really kind of explore that sense of familial obligation in the sense of like carrying on your bloodline or your name. Because like Bill Murray, first of all, by the way, Bill Murray, I thought was fantastic. Like, I was surprised. Not that I expected him to not be great, but I feel like Bill Murray he's kind of up there in age now. But like, I kind of feel like my perception or my perception of his acting recently has been kind of just like, I'm Bill Murray. Let me do a Bill Murray thing. Which is fine. Like, people love the Bill Murray thing. I'm a fan, but like, it doesn't really give a lot. It doesn't really give a lot of impression that he's like wanting to do the work of acting, and it's more like him popping up in like Ant-Man Quantumania is like, okay, he's being Bill Murray. He's being silly, but like here, he's got like the thick like accent. He's intimidating while also being this like not frail old man, but this older man, and like playing off of Pete Davidson having like this quirky thing, but also being intimidating. Like, it's a pretty layered performance that I actually really enjoyed from Bill Murray.
Yeah, me too. He and especially in the third act, he's kind of the star of the final set piece, and he has great screen presence. Like, you can't take your eyes off of him, and in the finale of the movie, and he's actually quite menacing, and so I can see why he probably took the role as like an acting challenge, but the movie also kind of tries to, I would say it strains to get the funny out of him too.
Yeah.
And set up this dynamic between him and Pete Davidson as like this sort of odd couple partners in crime. And like, sometimes it's funny, sometimes it works. Other times it feels kind of forced and awkward. Yeah. I did think there's a set piece with them involving two kind of suburban nightmares of people.
Yes.
Like this suburban couple that they have to interact with that is pretty hilarious. I think it's probably the best bit of comedy in the movie.
Yeah.
But going back to what you said about the theme of like what defines masculinity, like, it's explained in such a way that you would think Bill Murray's character would be a little more understanding.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I guess it works because the movie kind of establishes that he has a pretty extreme reaction to things. And what's actually pretty interesting is in the end, when he is at his most extreme, like, he doesn't even seem to really be that invested in what he's doing. It's almost like he's lived this life of crime to a point where this is just how he's used to reacting. But the movie does find him kind of questioning like whether he even wants to dole out these punishments. And it kind of questions the whole like mob mentality of resorting to murder, and kind of highlighting like the absurdity of that being a solution to like virtually every problem within crime families. But I feel like that's more interesting to talk about, and it's like the movie doesn't really explore that as much as I'm giving it credit for, if that makes sense.
Totally. And I also felt like there was this weird kind of clash in tone. Like, I think when it does the comedy aspect of it and the crime aspect of it, it seems very much influenced by like Coen Brothers stuff. Obviously, that's kind of the obvious comparison. But I think that it branches off from that, or branches away from that, with having like it be so focused on the kid played by Miles J. Harvey, DJ, in the movie. And like, I thought he did a good job. He was great, but it felt like such a clash of tone. Like, he's this precocious kid. He's very funny, and he's very kind of just like commanding of conversations and everything. And like, he's reacting to things and all of that, but like, I felt like that was muddling the rest of the movie in a way that is nothing against the actor, but I think just the clash of tone. Like, we have the crime aspect when it becomes more of an out and out crime, like high stakes thing at the end. It feels like, okay, but we've also been like having this kid narrate this whole thing throughout the entire movie. And it's just like, it's a weird, like kind of disorienting sort of combination of different tones.
Yeah, and I would blame that also on the movie maybe having too many characters.
Yes.
With all due respect to Jennifer Coolidge, I thought she did a great job with the material. Having said that, I could have gone completely without that character.
Yes.
I also think Gabrielle Union's character is pretty underdeveloped. It's so is Pete Davidson's character.
Yep.
It has this huge ensemble, and it brings them all together in the end, and really makes you realize like how many people are in this cast.
Oh yeah.
Like at one point they're all sitting together, and it's like kind of ridiculous.
Right.
I think it just tries to juggle way too much. And like, I'm not gonna fault a movie for being ambitious. Like, that's great, but I just think it kind of has a few too many characters.
Absolutely. And when you have so many of these characters kind of clashing, their storylines clashing and everything, the way that kind of plays out creates this just, it's why certain themes throughout the movie aren't touched on nearly as much as they should be. Like, there's a whole like backstory, there's a whole subplot or plot thread involving like the father of DJ. And like, when that comes to pass, it feels like it's taking away from like the other threads that have been laid for the movie. And it's just like, it just doesn't feel like they're really focusing on one thing enough to justify having multiple things going. It's like they're spreading it a little too thin.
Yeah, and I feel like the Miles J. Harvey character is kind of there to like comedically clash with these other people who are very different from him. Yeah. And I don't know if the comedy pays off enough to really justify that. Right. Like, he's like kind of a nerdy kid, and it's funny to see him bouncing off of these other characters who are kind of, rough, like street types. And, well, I mean, they're criminals basically. Right. And, he's kind of a book smart, nerdy kid. but like the movie doesn't have any particularly funny moments with him.
Yeah.
He's kind of, it's like the idea of him is funny, but nothing he does is really that funny.
Right. I agree. I will say that considering he is my friend from episode 137 of the Obsessive Viewer podcast from November of 2015, Michelangelo Covino did a good job in the movie.
He did. I thought what's interesting, his character gets like a nice arc.
Yeah.
Because he is first depicted as like kind of a total scumbag. And then he is given a bit more humanity in the flashback sequence. And it kind of explains his behavior as extreme as it is.
Yeah.
But I think even then there could have been a bit more with like the pressure from his father. Like the pressure from his father kind of comes out of nowhere, I felt.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And I get that the whole movie is like kind of exploring like chosen family versus blood family, but I don't know if it really like ties everything together all that well.
Yeah.
What did you interview that actor for?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, actually. I believe he was also an actor in this, but he was a producer on a movie called Keep in Touch, which I really, really liked. I don't think it ever got like distribution or anything, but it was a story about the website is actually down for the movie, but it's called Keep in Touch. It's about an ex-con who kind of reconnects with, like, he gets out of prison and he finds out that a girl that he was in love with, I don't remember if they were in a relationship or anything, but like he like had like a very, very big flame for, while he was in prison, died, or like from his past, died in a car accident. And he kind of becomes not really obsessed with her sister, but like he kind of ingratiates himself in her sister's life and kind of starts to fall for her without telling her his connection to her sister. It was really, really good. And yeah, I always kind of think about that whenever I see Michael Covino in anything, because he was also in that Tom Hanks movie News of the World.
Oh wow, I had totally forgotten about that movie.
Yeah, that honestly,
no offense to Michael Covino.
Oh no, I think that knowing that he was in it was the only reason that I like remember that movie. Yeah, but I also not to brag, but in that episode I also interviewed Alex Wolff.
Oh
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, that was a really good Heartland. That was maybe my first time that was my second time covering Heartland, I think. No, it was my first one. Yep, my first time covering Heartland. Yeah, it was intense. I've watched a lot of movies that year.
I'll have to go back and listen to that. That's cool.
Yeah, I recommend it. I will never listen to it again because those live episodes, those like interview episodes from like film festivals, I'm terrified to listen to because I feel like I just sound like such an idiot.
I'm sure you're great.
Thank you. I was fishing for that. But yeah, no, I'll put a link to that episode in the show notes of this episode. But yeah,
he's a good actor. I enjoyed his performance.
Yeah, me too.
I feel like I've seen him in other things.
Yeah. Yep. I think I don't know, but yeah, he's good, and I'm glad to see him popping up. He had a movie with I can't remember the other actor's name, but it was called it was like it got some claim out of Sundance. I think it was fairly recently. It was about bike riding or something. Not the Bike Riders, but The Climb. It was called The Climb.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I never saw it, but I wanted to. It was from 2019. So yeah, a look at the friendship between two guys that spans over many years. Oh, he actually directed that too. He co-wrote it, directed it, and co-starred in it. Huh. I'll have to check
Michael
that out.
Covino listens to this episode, he's going to be psyched.
He will be. Yeah,
A lot of love for Michael Covino.
Right. I guarantee he has not, like, he does not know he probably does not remember the 3 minutes I spent talking to him at Heartland 10 years ago now. But yeah, shout out to Michael Covino. I'll check out The Climb and I will share my thoughts at some point. Yeah. So anything else on Riff Raff though?
It's an odd movie. Like I said, I caught that the same weekend as Last Breath at Regal Shiloh.
Nice.
And it was another movie that, like, it didn't like bowl me over or anything, but
Sure.
like I didn't regret watching it. And I don't know, I think in this sort of like hyperbolic internet culture, I think it's important to remember that like not everything has to be the greatest movie ever made.
Absolutely.
Like I went to the theater hoping to be engaged for an hour and a half, and I was engaged. So
There you go. Exactly. And like it's one of those things where like we're in like this is the middle point between like, you know, award season and like summer blockbuster stuff. So like it's good that we've got decent movies coming out, or like just fine movies, I'll say. So yeah. Yeah. Well, that will do it for our secondary review. Do you have time for a quick potpourri? If there's anything you want to kind of shout out in terms of things that you've watched lately or what have you?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Well, once again, Riff Raff is available in theaters now. Yeah, check it out and let us know what you thought. Now we're going to wind down the episode with a quick potpourri segment. If this is your first time listening, Michael Covino. Potpourri is a section of the podcast where we close things down. We kind of share in a round robin fashion things we're looking forward to, things we watch, things we're looking forward to, whatever we want, as long as it smells good. It's the potpourri section. So Sam, what do you have for potpourri in this episode of the Obsessive Viewer podcast?
I guess continuing my trend of going with TV,
Nice.
since this is the obsessive viewer and not the obsessive film viewer.
Exactly.
I'll feel free to talk about TV. I finally caught up with the show Spaced.
Oh, okay.
Which was kind of put Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright on the map, as well as Nick Frost, a lot of other British actors. It's a great British sitcom. It's only 2 seasons. I finally watched that, and I also watched another beloved British sitcom, The IT Crowd.
Interesting. Okay.
And both of them just cracked me up. They have very lovable, quirky characters. You know, it's fun to watch, especially to watch Spaced, to see its influence on, you know, Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz and you know, Edgar Wright's other movies, Simon Pegg's other movies. It has a lot of clutch pop culture references, as does the IT Crowd, actually.
Yeah.
And I found both shows just very comforting. Like, I could relate to the characters. I felt like I was hanging out with friends. Just delightful, both of them.
Nice. It's been so long since I've watched either of those. Like Spaced is a show that I watched when I was a security guard with Tiny. So like it was middle of the night. We were watching it on our laptops when we should have been protecting the building that we were in charge of. But yeah, I need to revisit Spaced. And the IT Crowd is definitely a good comfort show, even if the creator of it is a huge piece of shit.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I Google some of his stuff or not. He's a shithead.
Upsetting.
Yeah, but one thing from the IT Crowd that I think about a lot is when they're talking about soccer or football. Just like when it's one of the early episodes, someone comes in and says something like, "Oh, did you see the football game?" And Richard Adewije, I think.
Yeah.
He's like trying to engage with him, and the guy's like, "Yeah, that ref sucked," and he's like, "Yes, he was the villain of the piece." Like I think about that all the time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so great.
That's a great episode because they have like a sports fan translator.
Yeah,
or
like a service or something. Yeah.
that gives them like stock phrases to say to seem like sports fans. And that's hilarious.
So great. So great. Yeah. I need to watch both of those again for sure. But that's Spaced and the IT Crowd. Do you mind if I round us out for Potpourri?
No, please do.
All right. So, kind of following a similar theme, I watched a TV. I watched a TV show, or at least I watched 2 episodes of it, and I'll probably finish it out because it's kind of interesting. Do you know anything about Paradise on Hulu?
I've heard a little bit.
Okay.
It has James Marsden.
Yes. And Sterling K. Brown. Yep.
Yeah, tell me more.
Yes. So this is an interesting show because I'm not going to tell you much more about it because it is one of those like kind of not mystery box shows, but it does have its central premise is very interesting, and it's not something that really comes to light until the end of the first episode. So I'm not going to say exactly what the circumstances are of it, but basically it's about a Secret Service agent who, in the opening of the show, walks in on the president dead. And so there are flashbacks and there's a lot of like intrigue and mystery about that. But what is interesting about it is that this is a show that's created by Dan Fogelman, who did This Is Us, which I'm not a fan. Like I watched like a few episodes of that and just didn't really care. But he also did that really shitty Amazon Prime movie, Life Itself, which...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which I really didn't like. In that, like, that movie felt like very kind of emotionally manipulative. And like, I remember specifically having the thought with Life Itself that the issue I had with it was that it felt like the story was built too much around like surprising the audience instead of developing the characters and reaching like a surprise connections between characters in an interesting and organic way. Instead, it's just like, oh, look at this. The big surprise is that this person's related to this person. Like, you didn't know that, you fucking idiot. But like, I say all of that because this does feel like a Dan Fogelman thing, because it's kind of in the same vein as that. It's like the cliffhanger of the pilot episode is basically like, oh, this is what's really going on. You didn't think about that. Like, you didn't know that this was what was going on. And like the whole time I'm thinking like, it's probably something interesting. It's something's off. Something's interesting about this. So it's not like the big, like, oh my God moment, but the actual concept, the thing that they introduce and that they're running with is something that is in my wheelhouse in terms of my interests. And it's something that I'm kind of excited to check out or to continue watching, because I am, as much as I'm not really a fan of Dan Fogelman's work, this has kind of piqued my interest, and I'm sorry I can't say much more in terms of specifics, but I think so far it's good. 2 episodes in, it's pretty solid.
Well, cool. I was curious about that, so
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was a Dan Fogelman thing.
Yeah.
I've never watched This Is Us, but I know of it, and it's sort of like soap opera in nature.
Yeah, and like the whole thing with This Is Us is like, it's the same kind of thing with the first episode of This Is Us being like, oh, you're going to think that this is like happening concurrently, but oh, it's actually divergent timelines, or it's 2 different timelines, and these people are actually related to each other this way and everything. You didn't see that coming, you fucking idiot. But Paradise at least seems like it's curtailing that, like, you didn't see that coming, you fucking idiot sort of tone, at least in the first episode. So I appreciate the growth of Dan Fogelman.
Very good.
Yeah. So that is on Hulu. And Sam, I think that brings us to the end of this episode of the Obsessive Viewer podcast. Thank you so much for joining me and for giving me so much of your evening. I'm so sorry we ran over.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to tell people where they can find you online, and if you have anything in the hopper?
Yeah. So you can find my written reviews at MidwestFilmJournal.com. I'm also on Letterboxd at Sam Movie Man. In terms of stuff in the hopper, in March, Midwest Film Journal has a Robert Downey Jr. series.
Nice.
I'm going to cover U.S. Marshals, which came about kind of. It was an odd time in his career in the sense that I think he was actually like between prisons or something. Or like it was in the middle of his incarceration. I just remember something about the timing of it being kind of controversial at the time. So I'm eager to dive into that. Yeah, that's about it, really.
Very cool. Nice. Well, once again, you can find links to all of Sam's stuff in the show notes of this episode, and follow him on Letterboxd at Sam Movie Man. And that's it for this week's episode of The Obsessive Viewer. As always, thank you so much for listening, and make sure to follow the show on social media and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcast app. Also, check out our other shows, Tower Junkies and Anthology. And also, make sure you check out Patreon. I have that free episode about the Oscars. It's up there, so check that out. Just sign up for a free membership or paid membership so that I can keep the lights on here. Next week on the show, I'm going to start playing myself out a little bit late, but next week on the show, the plan is that I'm going to be reviewing Mickey 17 and The Electric State on Netflix. So we'll see what happens there. Also, I am reviewing Severance on Patreon, and I'm just kind of filling time while this music jingle plays out so I don't have to do too much editing. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week. And now, enjoy this short clip from a recent Patreon-exclusive episode. For the full episode and more Patreon-exclusive content, sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. That speech for original song, like, I feel like Amelia Perez is going to take a lot of awards the rest of the evening, maybe, judging from how it's been so far. But, like, that was the most obnoxious, like, cringy acceptance speech, because at the end of it, one of the acceptees or acceptors or whatever, was singing along, like it was so awkward. And like they started playing them off the stage, but it was just like it really makes me not want to see this movie. So yeah, congratulations for original song, but yikes. Thank you for listening to the Obsessive Viewer podcast. This episode was produced and edited by me, Matt Hurt. If you have feedback, thoughts on our episodes, or just want to connect, you can email me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com. For more information on this show, including a full archive of our episodes and show notes, visit obsessiveviewer.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please give us a follow on social media and subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. Also, consider rating and reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible to help increase our visibility and grow our community. If you want to support the show and get early access to new episodes, as well as a steady stream of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. For information on more podcasts presented by obsessiveviewer.com, visit obsessiveviewer.com/podcasts. Our theme song is A Little Mad Sometimes by As Good As It Gets. For more of their music, check them out on Spotify and at asgoodasitgetsmusic.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Get up to 2 months of free podcasting service with Libsyn. Check out the show notes for your promo code to get started podcasting today.